So you decided to install Gentoo. Well, I'm not going to talk you out of this. Instead, here are my 10 Gentoo tips. Before we actually start this video, I want to tell you that I am by no means a Linux expert or some kind of sysadmin with a huge beard. I'm just a dude with no life that decided to install Gentoo, and well, now I just want to share with you some tips about it. First one is going to be a little bit basic, a little bit obvious, but I just can't stress how important it is, and that is configure your own kernel. Now, I know, everyone, literally everyone says that. It actually even says it on a Gentoo wiki in AMD64 handbook. But a lot of people, myself included, tend to just be like, nah, I'm too lazy, I'm just gonna go with the gen kernel routes, but don't do that. Although there are no serious circumstances when you configure your kernel automatically, but afterwards, every time you need to update your kernel, the compiling process is gonna take forever. So please take some time to research, Google every option, and do it yourself. It's literally set and forget unless you change your hardware. Just spend some time on this, alright? Now this one might seem a little bit basic as well, but I recently found out that XORG is running with root privileges by default in Gentoo, and to make it run as an unprivileged user, you'll need to compile it without SUID use flag. There's a really good guide on the Gentoo wiki page on that. It's really simple, you just have to remove the SUID flag from XORG and add yourself to input group, and you're basically good to go. So go and check it out because this is pretty important for security. Speaking about use flags, there is a really good utility to manage use flags and keywords called FLAGGIE. So go ahead and install it. It's really simple to use. For example, if you want to add a use flag, just type sudo FLAGGIE plus flag. If you want to remove it, just change plus to minus. This piece of software is pretty simple to use and it saves you a lot of time, so go ahead and install it right now. If you're a tinfoil hat paranoid that thinks NSA is after him and all that, you might want to do one thing before actually installing Gentoo, and that is setting it up to use LibreSSL instead of OpenSSL. In case you didn't know, there was a security vulnerability about a few years ago at OpenSSL, and some folks decided to fork it into LibreSSL. And this is what Void Linux, for example, uses by default. And in Gentoo, you have to make this decision before actually proceeding with installation, because once you've compiled all the packages you need, it's going to be pretty tough to change them to use LibreSSL. And that's what folks over at Gentoo recommend as well on their wiki. So think about it, and if you want to use LibreSSL, make this decision before installation, otherwise it will be too late. This is something a lot of people tend to skip because they think it's not very important, but it's actually pretty important. Make sure to include all the CPU-related optimizations in your make.conf. There's a piece of software in official Gentoo repositories, I forgot its name, but I'm gonna write it somewhere here. That should help you to get started with the CPU use flags. Also, don't forget march. For example, if you have an Ivy Bridge based Intel CPU, you have to put march equals Ivy Bridge. There's also a list of values for other CPUs on Gentoo wiki page, so I'm gonna put it in the description, go check it out as well. Apart from the official Gentoo kernel sources, there are also sources called Linux CK. These are Linux sources with CCACHE sets. They can really improve performance on some Intel CPUs. So if you have an Intel CPU, especially older ones like Ivy Bridge or Sandy Bridge, be sure to install it. I run it myself and I can't really say whether there is any significant performance gains, but it certainly can hurt, right? Probably the most annoying thing about Gentoo is compiling times, and as you probably already know, it might take up to 1 or 2 days to completely install all the packages you need, and sometimes you just don't have the time. You gotta do stuff urgently, or you have something important coming up. And even though Gentoo is a source-based distribution, it actually has some binary packages in the repositories, for example Firefox and LibreOffice. So if you don't want to spend extra time compiling this really heavy package, it might be worth to go check it out, and maybe there's a binary version in the repositories. And I think it goes without saying that this should be more of an exception and not a rule, because if you install all the packages in binary, then why even running Gentoo? Stop. Go install Arch. Jesus. One more thing that can drastically improve your compiling times is called CCACHE. CCACHE basically stores C objects from compiled packages, and when you compile it again, it reuses some objects, and that can save you a lot of time. It's really worth setting it up after the base system is installed, so that when you install the rest of packages, they're already cached, and when you update them again, it's going to take much less time. So I really recommend it. Set it up, saves a lot of time. One more thing you can do if you have a second computer or even a third computer is to set up dissysy. Once again, there's a really cool guide over on Gentoo wiki about how to set it up, so go check it out. There's just a few things I want to mention. First of all, it's probably not going to work if you run another distro, for example Ubuntu or Fedora on your slave machine. I've tried it and for some reason it just didn't work. Maybe it was because of different GCC versions, I don't really know. So I just installed Gentoo on my slave machine and it started working. Also, one more thing, kind of obvious, but still, if you run it in VirtualBox, don't forget to set up port forwarding, because I spent literally half an hour debugging the issue, whereas it was just the ports were mapped, so yeah. So if you already did all the stuff I mentioned in this video and you still want some more, you're still not satisfied, you want to squeeze that extra bit of performance out of your machine, I've got the exact right thing for you. It's called GENTOOLTO. GENTOOLTO is an overlay for Gentoo that enables O3 optimization, graphite, and LTO, which stands for linked optimizations. Theoretically, it means that the packages you compile your machine will run faster, but it also might cause some problems because not all the packages support O3. And although all the packages compiled without any problems in my machine, this might not be the case for you, so I'll link the GitHub repository in the description, and if you have any questions, if you have any problems, just contact the maintainer, let him know. But for me, it worked really well, and even though it took about 2 days to recompile old packages, yeah, I have no life. Now my machine kind of feels snappier, or maybe it's just placebo, I don't know. So there you have it, these are my 10 Gentoo tips, and if you have more tips and tricks, you can post them in the comment section. I will be really glad to see them because I'm also just starting with Gentoo. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.